honestly did not know that instrument could make some of those sounds. My goodness.
Well, it's phenomenal how much these electric instruments have come on since I had one at home, and yeah, no, it's very surprising indeed. Yeah.
Come a long way in a fairly short space of time, I think. Before we get on to the proper Q&A, could you just tell us what that beautiful palette cleanser at the end was?
So that was from a set of prières originally by Alcan, actually for pedal piano, which was transcribed by Damotta, who was one of Liszt's students. So that's how come it sort of works a theme into the album.
Tell us a little about some of those themes running through the album and how it's a fascinating topic to explore on a debut disc. What set you off down that path?
Well, I think one of the pieces that was originally set to me by my previous teacher, who's my late teacher, Andrew Ball, he sent me the piano sonata by Julius Reubke, who died very young himself. He died at 24, but he was possibly Liszt's most original and talented pupil. And he left two large-scale works, the piano sonata and the organ sonata. And I suppose, given the opportunity, given such an amazing privilege really to sort of record a debut album, I wanted to go for repertoire both that was unusual and perhaps also perhaps quite impractical. And I suppose the Reubke organ sonata, I've never seen it played live, and so it seemed like a really nice project to embark on.
It seems like you certainly thought a lot about what you think a debut album is for and what you wanted to explore with that. Tell me a little bit about your recording process. The first time doing this, did you record that whole list in one big chunk, or did you go for long takes, or did you go slightly more eating a lion bit by bit?
Well, I suppose for anyone that doesn't know already, I had the privilege of working with two people right at the top of their craft, really, which is Oscar Torres, the sound engineer, and Andrew Keener, who is I think quite a legendary producer. And so being able to work with them made the whole thing, as doing it for the first time, really comfortable. I suppose, to answer your question, I'd always much rather sort of go for the overarching piece first and to try and record as much as you can straight away, and afterwards sort of nitpick and go over details. So yes,
makes perfect sense. Yeah. Yes, especially with something on a scale like that Liszt.
Well, yes, and I suppose we were recording everything from sort of a work of half an hour, which I suppose would of course be split into movements, and 3 or 4 minute miniatures. So of course a different process.
Yeah. Cut your suit according to your clock, I guess. Now it seems like Liszt is a very special composer in your life. When did he enter the picture for you?
Well, I suppose quite similar for a lot of pianists. I suppose my own experience with Liszt, the first book I got was a book of his sort of lyrical miniatures, including the Consolations and some of the Christmas tree pieces, which sort of gave me a completely false impression about his repertoire and his output. And actually, the first time I remember watching a video widely available of Berezovsky playing the 12 Transcendental Etudes, and that was, I think, the first time when I really was sort of wowed by what is capable on the piano. Yeah.
Any plans to tackle those yourself, or do you play them already, the etudes?
Oh, definitely at some point. I mean, their central repertoire, of course, I've looked at them in private. Of course, it's central repertoire to be performing on stage, and lots of people play them, but I'm sure at some point, especially the last three I would really love to perform at some point. Yeah.
Now, tell me a little bit more about the connections between some of these composers, the story between Liszt and Busoni, who I meant to say at the beginning, I'm sorry, Busoni was the transcriber of that Liszt fantasy. But Liszt, we think he also played that on the piano himself.
Yes. So in the case of the Fantasian Fugue on Ad Nos, Liszt, of course, he was an organist himself, but he did perform it several times. It's one of his masterpieces, really. It's one of his large-scale works. He did write it on piano, but he didn't leave us with a transcription. So in this case, I suppose Busoni adds one or two little things, like at the end, the cadence, I think, is very original and kind of typical of him. But aside from that, really, it's just sort of, it's tremendous, really, that he's left us with such a finished version that really, I think, could be played a lot more.
Absolutely, it really deserves more outings in that guise, I think, in that new clothing. And with the other transcriptions, did you play them exactly as they are on the page, or did you do a little bit of your own adapting as you worked?
Well, I suppose most of it was, what's on the page. I suppose what I found interesting was the process with the Roibke organ sonata again, which compared with Adnos, it's a much more rough, kind of very literal transcription with virtually impossible passages at the end, which I thought needed a little bit of editing and patching. And I suppose what I think what you referred to slightly earlier in terms of what was the whole point of when you're making a debut album and you've sort of been given this education, you've been given this technique and this possibilities, I suppose is also to try to find your own sort of unique voice, whether that's composition or transcribing at some point. And I was sort of feeling that some of these avenues that I was trying to explore in this album, I was trying to explore also with a longer term view of, again, I suppose trying to develop my own voice a bit better. Yes.
I also love that you've taken it right up into, the present day, the 21st century. You've got one of the great composer, pianist, transcribers of our age, Sir Stephen Hough, represented on there, which I thought was absolutely lovely. I'm assuming you're a great admirer of his playing as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've grown up being aware of his performances from a very young age. I mean, some of them, for instance, his performance of the Paderewski Nocturne in B flat inspired me to actually learn the piece, which I ended up playing for the preliminary round of the Leeds competition. And I know that he was also a friend of Andrew Ball's, who was my mentor that I was referring to, who is also sort of his influences. I feel sort of within the album, including the Roibke and also the Busoni, because I think Andrew was a great Busoni exponent as well. And actually, yes, this Hough transcription of the Frank is actually, I think it's his first go at transcribing himself, I think.
Wow. Okay.
And actually, I was not even aware of the Frank chorale until we started the research process. I wasn't aware of the 3 Frank chorales. And I think, I was really, really very much impressed, and I hope to play it live at some point, this transcription. Yeah.
I gather that Sir Stephen has gone on to transcribe bits of Disney and Mary Poppins for an album which is coming up this summer. If anybody is in the mood for some light summer listenings, do keep an eye out for that. I think it is called Postcards, just piano postcards. So yes, he's continued to keep that ball rolling. Now, you mentioned there how aware you are that you've got the privilege, you're in this position to have the technique, monstrous technique at this stage, to bring all of this music to life. What are your plans for what you want to do with that over the next, let's say, 6 months to 12 months? What's coming up?
Well, so I've got a lot to think about even in the next few months. I suppose a couple of the really interesting projects I've got lined up. I'm been invited back to the Jam on the Marsh Festival as an associate artist, in which I'm going to also be working with an intensive of young composers who've come through an application process, and we're going to be working together on their compositions for piano, which are going to be performed in a concert in November of all new music, along with also there's a separate intensive for accordion, which the accordionist Ryan Corbett will be involved in. So, and then this will also link into a concert for 4 hands at the Jam on the Marsh Festival this July.
Who are your other 2 hands?
With the artistic director John Hudson.
Right.
And then also in the spirit of sort of unusual repertoire, there will be a residency in Norfolk in July in Music in the Burnhams, which would be with the artistic director there is Adrian Bradbury, and he's put together a really fascinating program over the week. I'll be involved in solo and chamber music, including with him. And it will culminate actually in a piano concerto by Julius Benedict.
Oh, wow.
Who is a long kind of forgotten composer who was a colleague of sort of Weber's and Mendelssohn's, and who was actually a very active and prolific composer in that period. And I'll be playing the second concerto with Christopher Warren Green and the London Chamber Orchestra.
Wow.
Which will be quite exciting.
That really sounds like something that belongs on Hyperion, the Romantic Piano Concerto, volume 2073, doesn't it? I'll be really excited to catch that.